Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman. Hi everybody and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host, Linz.
And I'm your other host, Chris.
How are you doing, Chris?
I am fine. I'm good. I've been hot on the trail of Bigfoot since our last episode. It's had a fantastic reception, that episode. I'm really, really happy with it, and I'm glad everyone seemed to enjoy it. Of course, listeners, long-time listeners will know that you once gifted me a Bigfoot hunting license.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that on the episode, but I forgot. I was going to say, did you break out your hunting license?
I am using it every chance I can get, but I'm only using it for the powers of good. Much like our friend in the episode, I will not shoot. Only shoot with a camera.
Very good. Good to hear. What else have you been up to, Chris, other than hunting Bigfoot?
Well, I've been
getting chewed up by the capitalist machine.
Oh God! I've been reading a lot, actually. I made a resolution that I wanted to use a little bit of time every day to do reading, and I've read, I think, 7, 8 books this year already. So I'm pretty happy at that. Normally, my yearly total is 0.5 books, so I'm quite happy with that.
That's always a good goal. I think we might be psychically connected from our previous alien abduction episodes, because I also had the same thought last week, and I bought a couple of new books, and I'm like, I'm going to take some time in the morning to read. So I don't know how that's happened.
We spend way too much time together. That's probably the answer to the question.
Yeah, we have. And we've both listened to ourselves on these episodes and went, you know what? I could do with reading a few books. Oh, Chris, you might have noticed from my Instagram posts that I've been doing classes at an art studio recently.
Oh, yeah. How's that going?
Well, I had a really weird experience last week, and I just need to tell you about it. So I've been doing like clay work, and I went in on a day that I don't usually go in on, and I sat on this table, and a few really nice ladies joined me. And I didn't know what to make, so obviously, being me, I was like, all right, I'm going to make a little Loch Ness monster, and I'm going to do a little plug hole for drain the loch, you know. I'm going to do some little waves. So I did like a kind of serpenty, like Ogopogo one. And then the lady next to me goes, oh, that's really nice. Is that Loch Ness? And I said, yeah. And she turned to me, made direct eye contact and said, did you hear they were going to drain the loch?
No, she didn't.
She did. And I got this wave of paranoia, and I was like, sorry? What did you say? And she was like, did you hear they were going to drain the loch? And I was like, where did you hear about this? And she was like, I just read it on Google. Yeah, she was like, I just read it on Google. And I was like, when? And she was like a week ago. And then another lady was like, oh, well, if you read it on Google, it must be true. And she was like, is that a thing? And I was like, no, it's not a thing. And it's never been a thing. And I once said it on a podcast, and now everyone messages me saying drain the lock. And I had this paranoia. I was like, how does she know? And then it never occurred to me that she might have read the same thing. But I read this like 2 years ago and she read it a week ago. So what is this like misinformation that keeps getting pumped out into Google search results?
I mean, I'll admit, I've just done a Google search while you were regaling us with that story, and there is absolutely no mention of draining the lock anywhere.
Where have we seen this or read it? Like, I don't understand. Where is it from? And I couldn't believe she said it. I actually told Michael Septembrio, because I wanted to keep it for like telling you on the podcast, but I had to tell someone, and I told Michael, and I was like, Chris is never going to believe me. He's just going to be thinking that, like, I'm pretending that other people said it so I don't look so stupid.
The only result that I can find, though, was a Guardian Scotland notes and queries, where somebody, Alan Hooper from Bexley Heath in Kent, asked, would it be technically possible to drain Loch Ness? And
The Guardian, that sounds familiar.
But it's not an article.
Like, I know it's
just
the
a
newspaper.
question.
Oh, okay.
It's just anybody could ask this.
No, it was definitely an article. But yeah, thought I'd share that with you. Other than that, I just had a 48-hour migraine, which you know of because I had to cancel recording. And now here we are with an amazing episode for you today, Chris, about a very special man. But before we get into that, do you want to share our Patreon with people who might want to join?
Sure. So if you're a fan of the podcast and you'd like to give us a bit of support, you can join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio. We do put some things up there. It's largely at the moment a supporting thing. If you're enjoying us, you want to help contribute to the costs with the podcast, hosting and so on, we'd really appreciate it if you can join. But we are slowly but surely starting to get content together. And guess what, Linz? The Royal Mail has been unhacked.
Oh yeah, you put together a couple of things to send out. I do remember that. So now they can be sent.
They're getting there. I'm just waiting on one last thing and then they'll be off. So don't worry, Patreons. They're coming your way. And if you haven't yet told us your address or a P.O. box that you would like to be sent to, if you don't want to share your address, and you're a Patreon member, please do send that over. It's for your Bob's Balls members. They can get some lovely DSR goodies.
And don't worry, Chris isn't going to show up like Bigfoot and start breathing on your bedroom window pane. Well, he might.
I mean,
but that's an extra perk for some.
That was going to be the next tier I was going to launch.
Also, we could do a little prize draw for my Loch Ness monster. Once that's all cooked and ready to go, someone can take that off my hands. Maybe I'll make some Hexam heads, bury them in Chris's garden.
Oh, shit. If you're lucky, it's made of concrete, like so.
Well, I'll come with a pickaxe. But yeah, maybe I'll make some little creations and send them out to you guys. We could get that done, I guess.
Awesome. But you don't have to be a member of the Patreon to be part of a DSR community, of course. We do post all of the images. We post, all sorts of things over on our Instagram at d.s.radio. There's also our Facebook page, facebook.com/dystopian simulation radio, probably. If you search Facebook for it, you'll find it. We also have a Twitter that I've posted on 3 times.
Just go to Instagram.
DSR, I think. Yeah, just go to Instagram, man. Fucking Elon Musk.
All right, Chris. So is that everything out of the way for the intro today?
I do believe it is, yes.
Well, in that case, Chris.
Oui.
Virginity.
Yes.
Against our wills, we have collectively, as a people, learned how Prince Harry lost his. And no, Chris, I will not be inquiring about your personal life in today's episode, but I will say that virginity plays a big role in today's tale. In fact, it's usually the tagline attached to the articles and interviews on today's subject. A man named David Huggins, who is usually introduced as the man who lost his virginity to an alien. But the story is much, much more than that.
Yes. quick question.
Yes.
So I haven't read any of this stuff about Prince Harry. I know he's claiming to be like the Terminator in Afghanistan, but apart from that, I don't really know any of the other claims that he's made. So,
so you've been spared of his little virginity story. It's not much of a story.
I've either been spared or unspared, depending on your definition.
Yeah. Well, do you want to know how? It'll be a 30-second tale.
Please regale me the story of how our fallen prince lost his V card.
Well, apparently, it was very romantic. I think, if I remember correctly, it was around the back of a pub to an older woman who, quote, treated him like a stallion. So there you go, Chris. Now you know. Lovely.
I probably could have lived without that information.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm so sorry that I had to tell you that.
Round the back of the pub.
It's not where you expect Harry to be hanging out, is it?
That's it. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, it could hardly be inconspicuous, could you? As like, the second in line to the throne.
Yeah, kind of weird. But there is pictures, like old pictures of them, like partying and stuff.
Oh, please, I hope it was called the Queen's Head.
No, the King's Head.
Oh, yeah, that even better, yeah.
So let's move on to today's subject. First, we'll do a little bit of a backstory on David Huggins. So David is a man who is currently in his early 70s. He was born in Paulding County, Georgia. He grew up on his parents' rural farm, and he was hands-on with farm-related chores from a young age. There were very few residents around or like neighbours nearby, so it was kind of an isolated time for David as a kid. But he said that he liked it a lot, so he attended sermons with his grandparents in these makeshift churches, which were basically large tents filled with people and a preacher. So the preacher would preach the end times, and it wasn't uncommon for the attendees to feel the Holy Spirit and convulse and speak in tongues and all that. But rather than be convinced by religion, David felt more off-put, and he didn't really care for religion from that point onwards. So presently, he lives in Hoboken, New Jersey, where he works at a deli. He's well liked by those who know him. He's divorced, and he has been for just over a decade. He has a son in his late 20s who lives in Thailand, working as an ESL teacher. And David is a painter of very curious subjects, Chris. So he works with oil paint as a medium, and he's been creating these strange works since the mid-60s. So Chris, let's take a look at a few examples of a gallery of the work of David Huggins. So I'm going to show you a few, and you can describe them to listeners as they come through to you there.
All right.
So if you want to see these images, everybody, you can do so on our Instagram at d.s.radio. So Chris, here's one of the, not the first in the timeline, but one of his paintings. If you could just describe that to the listeners, please.
Okay. So, what we have is, in the center of the picture, an adult human who is suckling at the teat of a...
Oh, don't say suckling.
a sort of grey alien, although it's not grey in colour. It is more human flesh-like in colour. So it appears to be a female grey alien, but it has... The reason I say female is because A, it's got breasts that are being sucked on, and B,
Chris.
the fact that it's got long hair as well. You don't often see aliens depicted with long hair.
Yeah.
There's also 3 other adult aliens in the background, and each one is holding a little baby alien in its arms. There's also, from off-screen, a pair of adult hands coming in with a baby alien, presenting it sort of to the man. And then there's also another little alien just hanging out round the back, having a look at the guy's crack.
Very nicely described there, Chris. Perfect description.
The alien also seems to be wearing eyeliner.
I think that's its eyes.
Maybe.
All
Seems
right.
like it's got cat's tails going on the corner there.
You mean winged eyeliner?
Yes, winged
tails.
eyeliner. Sorry, I'm not.
You
Kat
should
Von
know
D.
that. We're best friends.
Oh God, I'm not going to say that.
What?
I did not mean it in this way.
Oh my God, what?
I was going to say, I know you like a good flick, but that was not what I meant. I meant the eyeliner.
I'm leaving that in, you pervert.
Your mother listens to this.
I'm leaving that in. That's what you get.
Sorry, Miss Roberts.
Okay, next one. Incoming.
Okay. So this is a couple of figures stood in a room. The room itself appears to be bathed in blue, and the floor of the room is a reflective surface reflecting what stood on top of it. The main thing it's reflecting, there seems to be, it's either a door or some kind of obelisk. It's either a doorway or an obelisk that's up against the wall, and that's emanating some very bright light from it. In the center of the room, there's a human male from behind, stood in a kind of interesting pose. I don't know how you would quite describe it. Legs apart, with one hand spayed out to the side and his bum out. And then
he's naked.
He is. Naked as the day he was born. But then, and this is where it gets slightly unusual, to his left, actually,
yep,
there is a giant praying mantis with a glowing head.
Yes.
They seem to be both kind of in a very similar sort of position to each other. Yeah, they seem to be emulating each other.
That's one word for it. This mantis character, he'll come into play later, so don't you worry. We'll learn a little bit about him. And I guess I'll throw in one more just to get a sort of feel for it.
Okay. This one is the least erotic of the three images. This seems to be on a spaceship looking at what I assume is Earth. From a distance, there's a couple of stars visible as well. There are two figures. One which appears to be a very short man, and the other is a very tall man.
Chris, what else could a short man be?
It could be a boy.
Yes,
could be a child.
Chris.
But
Chris, who's that small man you've been living with in your home?
No, but I don't know. I don't know the scale of this. The only thing I've got to go off the scale is Earth, and that's massive. So these might be big people. There is a human of indeterminate age. They're looking out, and then sort of guiding him to his right is a massive alien, which is in a sort of Michael Myers blue boiler suit.
Yes.
Kindly wearing shoes as well. The weird thing about this guy, he kind of reminds me of the giant from Twin Peaks. He's bald and smooth. He's got a long, flat nose, but he also appears to have there also seems to be some kind of flap on his head that is currently erect. Which, if that is a young boy next to him, Linz, this is a very different type of picture to what I thought it was.
You've put a whole new spin on this painting that I did not think of when I first looked at it. But yes, Chris, you're right. It's kind of a slanted mini Parasaurolophus kind of crest thing on the back of his skull. Or as Chris puts it, a big boner.
Yes.
So David's childhood wasn't too crazy considering where he grew up and the era he grew up in. It was very strange in a very different kind of way. So at the age of 8, or around 8 years old, David began seeing entities. Entities that his parents and siblings couldn't see. These entities and the experiences we had with them would become the main subject of David's artwork, as we've seen. So the first strange encounter that David ever had was with a, quote, small hairy guy with yellow glowing eyes who appeared from the forest in around 1952. So David, who was, as we said, 8 years old at the time, heard a voice call out to him and say,
"Behind you."
And when he turned, he was met with what could be described as something like a small Sasquatch, Littlefoot, if you will. So David understandably shat himself and pegged it to the nearest barn. He said he thought it was the boogeyman or some kind of untoward character, so he ran in fear. The creature did not pursue him. Instead, it just turned around and disappeared back into the woods. Strangely, David said that when he looked into the creature's eyes, he felt as though he was looking through those eyes at himself. We do have a painting of this first encounter, so Chris, you are lucky enough to be able to see what this little foot looked like.
Okay.
And you can describe it to the listeners again.
Let me see this little guy. Ooh, okay. So this this painting, again, all of these are going to be up on the Instagrams. Take a look for yourselves. This, you're right, it is a quite short, squat, Sasquatch-esque creature with yellow glowing eyes and a big monster munch mouth. It's difficult to know how big this guy is. He's emerging from the trees, appear to be big. I would guess that he's probably adult-sized, and the perspective of this is from a boy or just behind a boy's head, so the camera's lower down. But he's sort of the most abstract of the creatures that we've seen so far.
Yeah, and quite strange that this little creature, who is kind of Sasquatch-like, is involved in an alien story, because in the previous episode that Chris presented on Bigfoot, there was an alien Bigfoot link.
Yes.
Which was very interesting. So when I saw this little hairy guy, I was like, huh.
For anybody who hasn't listened to that, firstly, go back and take a listen to it. Yeah. But the link was kind of indeterminate, but there's often Bigfoot sightings in the wake of UFO sightings as well. So, yeah. Interesting.
Very. So the following year, in 1952, David had his second encounter. It wasn't with the small Sasquatch this time, rather a massive praying mantis-like creature that jump-scared him in the barn as he was searching for his baseball. So David was in the barn, and he heard a noise on the other side while he was rummaging around, so he walked in the direction of the sound, only to come face to face with a giant insect creature that sprayed him with a pale blue liquid when he began to scream in fear. The mantis creature would become a common character in David's future encounters, as you saw in the earlier painting, Chris.
I like this guy. I must say, just
you like the mantis.
I like the mantis.
You would like the mantis, you pervert.
Have you ever seen Space Ghost Coast to Coast?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I barely remember it, but I remember the mantis.
Yeah, Zorak.
Yeah, so David's next annual encounter came in 1953. He was walking alone through the fields around his home when he felt the intense feeling of eyes on him. He looked around, but he couldn't see anyone watching him, so he continued walking along the dirt path when suddenly, in front of him, a large grey head with big dark eyes popped up out of the tall grass. As David began to question what he was seeing, the environment became bright and filled with white light, and a group of small grey creatures surrounded him. He heard 3 consecutive beeping noises and passed out, waking up alone in another location with no clue as to what happened.
A wild Pokemon appears.
Yeah, can you imagine? Do, 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 and greys just start running at you. Like, that is fucking scary. Yeah. But yeah, he had his first classic Pokemon encounter / grey alien abduction, or interference, I suppose you could call it. So as a child, David did tell his parents about these creatures. However, he got punished physically and verbally and accused of lying, so he never talked about it again. Now, the sad part of this is that, according to David, his parents drank a lot of alcohol, and they would hit him with both their hands and objects when they were drunk, and his parents would fight with each other, and the fights were often about his dad having affairs with other women. So that's a really sad part of the story, and it did make me wonder if this is some kind of like a trauma response.
Yeah, like a way
maybe.
A way of coping with that. That's a horrible note in the story.
Yeah. So this is where the encounters really begin to ramp up. In 1954, David was accosted by these little grey beings while he was again alone in a field. Little fellas began dropping from the sky and running at him in formation when they landed on their feet. David recalls running as fast as his legs could take him to the family home. He crouched down to look under a gap between the base of the house and the ground to see if the creatures were still in pursuit. As he peered through the gap, he saw the creatures' legs as they stood motionless in a line facing the house. They then turned and walked back the same way they had come. But that night they returned and stood outside of David's bedroom window in the moonlight looking at him.
Did they also bring a giant boom box as well and play romantic songs to him?
No, they abducted him, classic Grey style. They were suddenly in his room, encircling his bed, before taking him outside and tractor beaming him up into the craft.
Oh, those Greys.
The idea of like looking up and seeing them dropping from the sky and then running at you in formation. Like, seriously, I've never been scared of a story about Greys before, but the picture of that in my head is just really horrific.
I think the Grey alien is pretty kind of scary anyway, because it's like the way that we represent it, it's like this kind of emotionless being with these big black eyes, and the idea of being lying in your bed, not able to move, and they're just like encircling you. I find that pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes, I always remember an image that's burned into my retina is the opening episode of season 2 of the X-Files, where there's like aliens surrounding like a bed, and they're like appearing behind all of these, like, well, in my head it's like frosted glass, but I don't know. But basically, there's somebody. I think it's Mulder. I think all of these aliens are like surrounding him, and it's oh yeah. To me, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I think honestly that I think that's why sleep paralysis is so awful, because like you're in bed, it's where you're meant to be all safe and cozy, and no one else is meant to be in there.
Yeah,
and then suddenly there's figures around or on your bed, like you're in such a vulnerable position. It's so freaking creepy, like universally creepy. It's so horrible. So I'm not usually scared of like Greys and stuff, even them around the bed, but I'm not sure if it's because whenever I think of a Grey, I think of South Park, like the early South Park episodes.
I don't know if they still do it. There was an alien in the background of every single South Park episode.
Really?
Yeah, and then they had they featured in some episodes, like the Cartman gets an anal probe. And so on.
Yeah.
But if listeners are interested in sleep paralysis, you've got a whole episode that you did with our good friend Septembrio on this back in the archives.
Exactly. You can go and take a look at a listen to that episode. It's a really good one, and Michael shares it's a story of his own.
Yeah, you don't want to miss out on that one.
Nope. Okay, so inside the craft, one of the Greys that held David was a very tall, slender, grey female wearing a black shoulder-length wig with bangs. She gave him basically what now sounds like a PCR test. But in his story, she shoved a metal rod up his nostril and implanted something inside his head. When David expressed that he was in pain, the being looked at him and the pain dissipated. David would later go on to say that he had never been ill in his life after this, not even catching the common cold.
Oh, that's an interesting little thing. I know I've heard of this before, that after these alien encounters, people they either struggle to get sick from common illnesses, or they become inflicted with more serious illnesses.
Yeah, you always hear that. But I always want these like abductees to like maybe get a scan or something and check if there's anything lodged up there.
Yeah.
I did watch a documentary once on TIs, targeted individuals, people who think they're being targeted by the government or some entity. And there was a woman who swore she had like implants in her. I think she was American, and they didn't want to do any scans on her or anything because they were like, no, it's unnecessary. So she went on vacation to like Spain, and she got like all of these scans done, and they were like, yeah, there's nothing in there. But she just would not believe that there was anything there. I love these people to get checked out though, but I guess it's not free to just get your head checked out and scanned to look for alien chips.
Luckily, the NHS over here love filling their time with scanning for alien chips, so yeah, definitely they'll do that for you.
So Chris, there's all sorts of different alien beings in David's story. Usually we just get the one, but David has a Rolodex of weirdos. So here's the main players in the story with DSR nicknames for easy storytelling.
Awesome.
So we have the Greys, the classic little grunts in blue skin-tight uniforms who fall from the sky and chase you down. We have Littlefoot, the little Sasquatch-looking hairy boy with the glowing eyes. We have the Woman, a thin, tall female Grey with a Lord Farquaad wig who will later identify herself as Crescent.
Ooh.
Then we have Knobhead, or Flaphead as you called him. He's the boss man, a tall, fleshy-coloured gentleman with an upside-down kettle handle on the back of his head. And Bug Boy, the giant praying mantis with a lack of social skills who likes to watch people bone.
I told you he was my favourite.
I know. So, in 1961, things start to get freaky. At this point, David, our main man, is around 17 years old. He's, of course, again, alone, walking through the woods one day, which I personally would have stopped doing a long time ago after the first few experiences, but each to their own. So he's walking along when he sees what he describes as a woman. Now, I don't know what the women in rural Georgia look like. I've never been there. But this is the painting David did from memory.
Have you never been down to Cobb County, Georgia?
I have not. So this is the woman that he saw sitting in the grass. If you could describe that to the people, Chris.
Well, she seems to look like, what was this woman called? Cylindrical. What was her name?
Crescent.
Crescent. I'm assuming that this is Crescent.
Yes.
However, if it's not, it's just your average garden variety goth. So it's a vaguely female-like figure with a white face. And when I say white face, I don't mean Caucasian. I mean pale white. It's got big, slanted black eyes. And it's got two very small nostrils, but it does have a nice smile on its face, along with an Uma Thurman-style haircut from Pulp Fiction.
Yes. And a blue robe.
Yes, it's dressed. The rest of it's all dressed head to toe in a blue robe, with possibly a nice scarf.
Possibly. Sitting in a very sort of casual position on the ground. So, Chris, if you saw this, if you happened upon this while you were walking through the woods, what would you do?
I'd probably back away quite quickly.
Well, David did something else. He got a raging boner.
Oh, David. David Huggins and a kissins. Oh God. You're it again, aren't you? David, I've told you, David, you can't fuck everything.
You can try.
Fuck everything and then paint it and call it art.
So we have a short, beautiful quote here from David, Chris. If you could just read this for us, you can put on your best Georgian accent if you want, or just read it as yourself, a fellow pervert.
I have no idea if this is a Georgian accent, so when any Georginians out there, I do apologise, but I became very aroused sexually.
Sorry. Sorry, start again.
I became very aroused sexually. I couldn't get my pants down fast enough. I fall back on the ground and I'm lying there and she's looking at me and I reached my climax, which was quite painful actually. And it was very intense. And then I'm looking into her eyes and I pass out.
Thank you, Chris. Lovely.
That's an interesting description of a semi-romantic encounter. So he suddenly became aroused, and he couldn't. It sounds like he almost was kind of felt an unnatural impulse to act in that way, because he says he couldn't get his pants down fast enough, and then,
which is a horrible sentence.
Yeah, then he's on the ground, and then I'm lying there, and she's looking at me. So it does actually imply that there's no actual sensual contact there.
Oh, there was, Chris, and we have a painting to depict that. And I had to take a picture of this from a documentary, so forgive the quality, but I've stitched two pictures together. These will be on the Instagram. Absolute gem of an image. So if you could describe this, please, Chris.
Okay. So is this David holding the picture?
Yes.
So David has drawn a picture of himself on his back in the middle of a forest, surrounded by trees, with an alien crescent, the alien mounting him. And he's got his arms flailed out in ecstasy, and the actual real life David, who is holding the painting, looks very happy with himself. And there's just a subtitle from a documentary that says "Virginity Lost."
I think that my screenshots put together is a piece of art in itself.
I think you might have. This is a meme template right here.
Yes, this is some good meme real estate, and I expect everyone to make their own memes from this and share the shit out of them.
Go ham, people.
And also, this is the first time we get to see David, so if you could describe David to everyone as well, Chris.
David looks more like Terry Pratchett than I thought he was going to. He's a rather kindly old man with a big, bushy goatee beard. He's quite thin, thin at the hips, broad at the shoulders. He's wearing some glasses. He looks like a sort of generic older man, and obviously he's much, much older in the photograph element of this picture than in the painting part of the picture, where he's presumably still a young, virile teenager.
Yep, he was 17 in the painting, and he's 71 or something now. So, yeah, and he looks just like a lovely man holding a very bizarre painting. So
does that make this crescent a wrong-un?
Yes, that's what I thought. That's a groomer. Sorry, David. That's a groomer in a wig and a robe. Horrible. So David had some classic experiences, often associated with alien visitation. For example, he woke up levitating in his bed once, and he also described going through portals to other realms and sort of astroplaning and having like out-of-body experiences. So Georgia wasn't a good fit for David since his parents weren't supportive of his desire for a career in the arts. He applied secretly to the arts.
Well, to be fair, did he show them these pictures?
He hadn't painted them by this point, obviously.
Son, I love you, but this is some weird shit.
You never know, it could have went down like that. So they weren't supportive of his desire for a career in the arts, but he secretly applied to the Art Students League in New York. He wrote his parents a goodbye letter, packed up and left home while they were out, and headed for New York City when he was 19. So that's 2 years after this experience with Crescent. So now his parents might not have visited him in New York, but the aliens weren't letting go that easily. They appeared to David for the first time at his new residence in 1965 in the form of vivid dreams. David began seeing what he describes as a woman's face, which is represented in a painting he did, which basically is a small white creepy face that looks like Crescent in the middle of a completely black canvas. So sleep paralysis demon style, head coming out of the darkness.
And was this Crescent?
Yeah, I think it's always Crescent reaching out to him. So he would later go on to say that they were kind of in a relationship. So, yeah. So these dreams came after he hailed a random black car on a rainy night in New York for a ride home, and a mysterious woman obliged. And from that night on, the dreams began. So in 1966, while still having these dreams that began to make him really frustrated, he heard a voice telling him that he'd be getting a visit that night.
Oh.
So he begins seeing ordinary things that he's drawn to, which he interprets as signs, and he begins connecting them to these beings. Specifically the, female groomer alien, let's be honest, Crescent. So he attempted to telepathically communicate with Crescent to see if there was any connection there. So he told her that this bouquet of flowers that he had bought were a gift for her, and he put them on his bedside table or his desk. He went to sleep, and in the morning, the flowers were gone. So this moment solidified that he was in communication with these beings and that the dreams were real, at least to him. And this was the start of a lifelong romance, I guess, with the alien Crescent.
Well, presumably the lifelong romance started when she boned him in the middle of the forest.
Yeah, but he didn't really get to know her, I think. She just kind of accosted him. So she started visiting him in the dreams, and I think he was seeing more of her. God, this is ridiculous. And it became what he describes as a romance. So during this period of his life, David didn't date an Earth girl at all. It wasn't really for lack of trying. He just couldn't get past the first date. So he started dating Crescent and made a lot of paintings of his various sexual encounters with this being. One of which depicts the pair banging while Big Mantis Boy watches from the cock chair in the corner. According to David, the mantis is always watching. Always.
Fucking freak.
So gross.
I mean, if you're into that kind of stuff, fine. I mean,
what, a mantis in the cock chair?
yeah, mantis in the cook chair.
I have 2 pictures. So these are paintings of the mantis watching. The mantis is always watching, Greg.
Okay, right. So here we have in the foreground, it seems to be David's room. This is very much a Earth room, if that makes sense. Before all of the images were on a spaceship, this one is very clearly like a dorm room. You've got a naked man lying on the bed. Straddled on top of him, you have a naked Crescent, who, interestingly, in this picture, while she's very clearly alien from the neck upwards, just seems to be female human from the neck down. Her skin is not the same color on her shoulders or on her legs as it is on her face, which is interesting. But just over in the corner, emanating a glowing light, you've just got Mantis Boy literally watching. He's not in a chair.
No.
But he is in the cook corner. And I think he's at that point where he's sort of realizing what he's done and is thinking, oh, this is my life now. I've just cooked my hot alien girlfriend out to an Earth boy.
Chris thinks Crescent's hot.
I mean, hey, viewers, judge it for yourself. But like in terms of greys, she's pretty much the hottest one going.
It's not hard, I guess. Well, maybe it is for you. What is wrong with us tonight? Oh my god.
Oh man, hold on. Whoa. This second image.
Yeah.
So this second image, it adds a lot more to what I just said there. Now I'm assuming that this is his apartment again, but in the setting, there's like a porthole on the side. So it could be a spaceship.
I think that's a door to his realm, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So then this is an Earth dwelling. I was going to say it's a very earthly bed, and he's lying asleep in the bed. But then next to it, you have, you've got Crescent, who, again, is completely human from the neck down. Yes,
it almost looks like a mask.
At this point, yeah, I'm starting to think either she's wearing a mask or it's face paint. And I've got something to point out to you in a minute about this, but let's continue on. And then just at the foot of the bed, again, in the cock position, there's Mantis Boy with his glowing eyes. Just sort of... And Crescent seems to be almost laughing and kind of like putting a hand out towards the mantis.
Yeah, as if to say, stop.
There's no sexual contact in this picture, but whether it's just about to happen or has just happened, I don't know.
And it's titled Unexpected Guests by David Huggins, and it's Oil on Canvas 2007. So David said during these encounters that he was always paralysed and he couldn't move, sort of reminiscent of those descriptions that people give of sleep paralysis or like a succubus or something. So inevitably, this relationship results in a pregnancy. Crescent shows up in David's room one night with a limp, grey alien baby dangling from her arms in a state of distress. She refuses to take David to the ship or whatever. So David lays down in his bed and he's like, fine, I'll take myself. He closes his eyes and he penetrates their realm, much to their displeasure. Taste of their own medicine, eh? So he touches the baby and a shot of electricity from his hand revives the child. He is then shown to a room which is wall to wall with babies in small plastic crib structures, and he is informed that they're all his. And he has to go around laying his hand on each one of them to like revive or activate them. So there's like over 50 of these little alien babies.
Wow. So he's pretty prolific on this. I mean, like, either they're doing something with this, like she's quote unquote collecting samples, or he is the most virile human that has ever existed.
Exactly, and for some reason his hybrid babies need to be activated.
These hybrid babies need to be activated.
So David starts having a major mental breakdown after this event. Crescent has to eventually step in and show him confirmation that his babies have all survived before he comes back to his senses again. He actually has a massive breakdown. So, kind of worrying, to be honest, and I would really be questioning my sanity at this point, if he already hadn't. The visitations seemingly stopped from this point, and David actually managed to form a relationship in the human world. He met his girlfriend Janice, a mosaic artist, and they would go on to have a kid together and get married.
His 51st child.
Yeah. Then, in the late 80s, those same feelings of being watched by some being began to surface again. And just like that day back at the farm in Georgia when David was a child and he saw the face of the great alien for the first time, those feelings came rushing back. So he begins to act really strangely, starts pacing around the family home, feeling watched. Then in slow drips, memories begin to return to him. Memories of the visitations that he realized he'd actually forgotten. So he hunts down this book by David Huggins, really famous ufologist, and he's reading it and he sees these descriptions of beings that look like Crescent, and the book describes people having similar experiences, and suddenly the dam that was holding back all the memories of these experiences breaks and come flooding out. So he does what most people wouldn't, and he shares this revelation with his wife. And in short, she thought he was insane. They were divorced several months later.
Bold move, David. Bold move. Didn't play off, but bold move.
But Chris, you can imagine, he's married to this lady, he never talks about aliens or anything. Then suddenly one day he starts acting paranoid and doing all of the paintings, like the paintings you've seen. And he also does a very hyper-realistic sort of almost to scale painting of Crescent. And it's very, let's just say it's very full-on. So Chris, I'm going to send that to you. If you could describe to the listeners what you're looking at.
Okay, so again, this is a photograph of David holding one of this possibly life-size painting, and it is a graphically nude picture of Crescent here. In this image, her head appears to be more alien. But once again, it quite quickly goes from the white-grey colour with the black Kat Von D eyes down to past the neckline. Just becomes a normal woman, although she does appear to be quite muscular. Yeah, she's got abs. And she also seems to be holding her breasts in quite a mechanical fashion.
Yeah.
But she has taken the time to shave, so...
Beautiful, Chris. So there's actually a documentary on David called Love and Saucers, which is very good. You can rent it on Amazon for like the price of a coffee, I think. And he also has a book about his experiences with, I think, all of his paintings or most of his paintings. So one interesting thing that came to me when I was writing the script was, from what I gathered from watching that documentary, I feel like he recovered these memories later in life, like during his married life. So it seemed that he'd never mentioned it to his wife before he actually started reading the Bud Hopkins book. So I think he's trying to say that all of these things happened. He didn't remember any of them until that fateful day when he told his wife. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, it kind of makes sense, you know, if his memories had been wiped. If you take
Oh,
it at
yeah,
face
that just
value.
makes total sense, Chris.
No, yeah.
No, I get what you mean.
If it truly has happened, his memory's been wiped, and they somehow come back to him. Okay, but the way that you kind of pitched this originally, I thought these were kind of long-held memories that he'd had.
That's what I
didn't
thought too.
assume
Mm-hmm.
at any point in this story that just one day, boom, he becomes obsessed with aliens. And yeah, that kind of throws a bit of a wrench into things. I thought that he was just living a double life, but he wasn't. He's just now suddenly obsessed with alien boobies.
Yeah, he really, really believes that he's uncovered these memories, that they've just come back to him from reading this book. So I did notice an interesting scene in the documentary as well. In one of the scenes, he's flipping through the Bud Hopkins book, which is about people's alien encounters, different types of aliens, and descriptions of it. When he recovers another memory of levitating off his bed one night, but only after he reads it in a passage in the book as they're filming him. He goes like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too. I forgot about that." So I was like, okay.
Although I can see how that could happen. You know, I mean, I think everybody's had some experience, haven't they? They've read something in a book and you think, God, did that happen to me? I'm sure that happened to me.
Jogs your memory, I suppose. Yeah.
But with something like levitating off a bed, maybe you might remember that. That does kind of lean towards somebody just going, oh yeah, that happened to me as well. Yeah, abduction. Yeah, anal probing. Yeah, yeah, that happened. Yeah.
So the human memory is actually pretty awful. There's actually been cases where people have misidentified people who have committed crimes against them and sent innocent people to jail. And there's also been studies where a quarter of the participants actually had false memories deliberately implanted through a series of interviews, no more than 3 interviews, just with leading questions. So it's actually way easier than you think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Rashomon effect, right? Mm-hmm. That 3 people can witness the same incident and come up with 3 very different stories about it.
Yeah, exactly. But they can also be implanted, which is very spooky. Because there was an example video that I watched, and it's a woman, and she's like, they go, "Oh, you got into a fist fight, didn't you, in school?" And she goes, "No, I've never been in a fight before, I don't think." The next time she comes, they ask her the same question, and she's like, maybe I had a verbal fight and I shoved someone. And then the third time she comes, she's like, "Yeah, I got into a fist fight in school." It's really strange how it works.
Yeah. The power of suggestibility, and that's...
Mm-hmm. But you can actually create a lot of...
con men and
false
magicians
memories.
And so on. Yeah, I've kind of really existed forever, so it's a definite thing that can be done.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, though, that he's painting these pictures, remembering these details. Okay, the pictures aren't... Like, the pictures of the rooms aren't really detailed. They're just very basic, walls, bed, and then he puts in the characters, one of which is him. So it's not too easy to remember. But so what are the theories here, Chris? What do you think? I mean, either it actually happened, aliens, or is it sleep paralysis? Is it implanted memories? Is it some mental illness? What do you think of this story?
I mean, essentially there's 3 options, really. It's either it really did happen, it absolutely did not happen, or he's having some kind of event, where he believes that these events happened, but this most certainly did not. I think the story itself is quite interesting because it's not unusual to hear tale in alien abduction of sexual encounters.
Yeah.
They may not be romantic in nature. They may be, like experimental from that case. It's not an unusual element to appear in an alien abduction story, but the fact that he's saying he's had a relationship with this alien, that they are kind of interdimensionally dating.
Yeah.
That he's like leaving flowers on the side of his bed and they're disappearing, and all of us. It's. I think you're led to go, yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's something to this. It's interesting, but I don't think that he's actually encountered aliens. I believe he has seen things. He may have reawoken memories that he's repressed. These might be representations of the abuse that he, unfortunately had inflicted on him when he was younger. I don't think he's actually been abducted by aliens, but definitely something is happening to him. But I think it's probably happening to him in his own mind.
Yeah. I think I have to agree with you on that. Like, something has happened where these images have just started coming to him, and he's just, yeah. I mean, I really don't know what to say about it. I mean, in the documentary, he just comes across as a very lovely, nice man. Everybody likes him. He's very gentle. His son is also briefly interviewed on the documentary, and he said that his dad had mentioned the aliens, but like it was never a thing that was like part of his life and stuff. So he didn't really, he wasn't forcing it on his family members. Like, they're up there, look, they're out there. You know what I mean? He just like, maybe he mentioned it and said, oh, people come to visit me, but they're not from here. I think that's what his son says. And everyone just seems to think he's a really nice, genuine, lovely man. And he seems like one too, but I have no clue where this all could have came from. But I'll tell you what I do have, Chris.
Oh, yes?
I have... There's a website called theartblog.org. And in 2019, they did a little interview, a text-based interview with David. And they asked some very interesting questions.
They asked some naughty questions of him.
Very interesting question. So, all right. So there's 3 questions from this little interview, just for a little bit more information if people were wondering if they had the same questions. So the first one is, in your book, you talk about the hair on the female hybrids as being a wig. What is it about the hair that seems so unusual to you?
It's very unkempt. I remember one time, one of the females was walking past me, and the hair just was not on right. She took it off, and I was taken aback by that, so I said, should I shave my head? To let her know that I was okay with it.
So a little bit more info on the hair there. If you imagine Crescent without the wig, that's a straight up grey with boobs.
Do you think they're wearing the wigs to appear more human?
I think so. And it just looks kind of uncanny and strange.
That's kind of adorable of them, though. I mean, like, bless him for trying.
He didn't like the mantis. Maybe we should wear a wig. So the next question is, how have your parents dealt with your ET experiences?
As a kid, I would see one of the beings and I would run to the house and say, hey, Mom and Dad, there's something out of the barn and something behind the house. And they would say, quit making things up. There's nothing there. One time I did, and it was too much, and I got a whipping real good. Next day I went behind the house and there was a woman, Crescent, and there is a few greys and one big insect being. And I remember telling the woman, my mama and dada don't believe me, and I see you, and I got a whipping. And as soon as I said that, I knew she didn't like that. She looked at me and said, then don't tell them. And after that, I never said a word.
Oh, that's kind of a little bit sad, isn't it?
That is sad, but it's also it's oddly romantic.
Oh, but I just feel like it sounded like he had a really shitty time with his parents.
Yeah.
And ran away from them when he was quite young, and
yeah.
They were probably, well, allegedly pretty horrible, so... And the last question, just to lift the mood a bit before we wrap this case up,
boy.
Chris, is the last question asked is, does the female ET's vagina feel any different from a human female? Just in case anyone was wondering out there.
So David replied to this, I can't say that there was much warmth. You got to remember your senses are subdued when you're with them, the intense orgasm that you would normally feel is toned down.
Horrific. Thank you very much for those questions and answers.
Yeah. I guess I've never, like I said, the question that keeps returning back to me is, why are these creatures so human-like? Every depiction of greys, they are, asexual in their appearance. But there's no discernible difference between them. They don't have breasts. They're just kind of one. They're not really sexual beings in that sense, the way that they're typically described. So it's just very interesting that this one, and this particular one as well, seems to be hyper-sexualized. There's been no mention of any other greys, really. Well, no, actually, that's a lie. There has been, because
just the grunts.
Yeah, they surrounded him. But is she like leading some kind of intergalactic sex cult?
I have no clue. Like, it sounds like a horrible
Has she
story.
got Davids all over the place?
Maybe.
And is she just like, has she got like a nightmare diary of just boning teenage boys from dawn till dusk?
Oh God! But you know what? When you earlier, when you said like, oh, the body is like a flesh colored, but then the head is white, and it has a wig. It honestly just looks like a person in a creepy mask, and it's really unsettling to think about. Like, it's more unsettling if it was a person in a creepy mask rather than an actual alien. And like, because they can get him anytime, they just open portals to his rooms. And I think it's funny when in a way it's funny when you don't know the story and you look at the paintings, because they're quite not childish, they're quite simple, and they're very just explicit. There's no suggestion. It's just very practical. It is what it is. It's like I don't know, but when you hear the story and you really look at the aliens and you're like, that's a person in a mask. I don't know what the mantis is, no fucking clue. But Crescent definitely just looks like a woman with a mask on, like a full head mask that you just pull over. Like, it's a very creepy.
The mantis is a lot harder to explain, because you can just say that's just a girl wearing a creepy mask or face paint, whatever it is. But to get a full blown mantis suit, I don't know when I get one of those. I'd love to know.
No, but like, maybe that's sort of a figment, that's like something in your imagination. Because it's glowing and it's got lights around it and it's just watching.
He's always watching.
Yeah, I don't like it. It really creeps me out. It didn't creep me out when I was researching it, but retelling it back to you and having you describe Crescent back to me has actually creeped me out more than I realised.
I've got a theory.
Okay.
I've got a theory. What if the mantis is not cooking, but is kind of like the support stuff? And what if, Crescent is sort of like, I'm here to do the business, but you are not quite ready yet, David. Let me introduce you to my fluffer. And that's the mantis. I mean, he's got a lot of hands, so he could fluff a lot of people at the same time.
Chris, you know what this reminds me of? Like, when you said he was there for support, one of my friends, like one of my German friends, used to live in China, and he said, he was like, one thing I found very strange about China was like it feels like they make up jobs for people. And I was like, make up jobs? What do you mean? And he was like, for example, one night I was at a bar and I went into the bathroom and I was, using the urinal, and he said, and suddenly an old man came up behind me and started going, yeah, woo, yeah. And then he was like, what the hell? So he finished and he washed his hands and ran back out, and he said to one of his friends, some old man just started cheering while I was like going. And then his friend said, oh yeah, he's the pee motivator. Like, it was his job to motivate people to pee.
I mean, to be honest, that'd be quite nice. I gotta feel I get enough praise for when I go for a pee.
So I think the mantis is like sort of a boner motivator, like you said, a fluffer. Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Chris.
Intergalactic.
intergalactic
fluffer.
fluffer.
Launching in your area soon.
So that's my story for today, Chris.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For that, Linz. Not what I was expecting out of today. But hey, we go to some very odd places here on DSR, and I suppose this is us foraying into a new DSR After Dark, a DSR night, a DSR late night edition of Dystopian Simulation Radio. So, yeah, I don't really...
Just bringing a bit of culture to the people, You should discover a new artist every month.
I don't really know what to do with this information that you've told me. David... What was his full name? David
Huggins.
Huggins and a kissing. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm glad that art's out there. It's pretty good. It's better than I could do.
Yeah, well, we can put this in the DSR files for when we, review future UFO cases. We can see if there's any similarities, similar elements. For example, we've already linked Littlefoot with the Greys, Bigfoot with the aliens. It's all coming together, Chris. Just another piece of that DSR puzzle.
There we go. It's a common thread that we've got. But where does Hitler fit into this? That's what I want to know.
Well, look through those paintings and you will see him. He'll be somewhere in those woods.
There he is.
He's in the Sasquatch costume.
There he is, cucking in the corner.
Sounds just like him.
A Nazi cock.
Is that a new sticker?
He's just a Nazi cock.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, Chris, and everybody out there. I hope you...
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this erotic episode of Dystopian Simulation Radio. If you've enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate if you can do whatever you can to support us. That could be from something big, like joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Dystopian Simulation Radio, to reposting one of our stories on Instagram, trying to get some of your friends to listen to us. We've been growing quite a lot recently. We've had a lot more listens. We're getting a lot more people coming towards the podcast, but we want to keep that going because podcasting is a difficult thing to do in 2023. There is a lot of competition and there's only so many minutes in the day. So thank you so much for spending your minutes with us. But until next time, when we have a very interesting story to talk about, Linz, I'm not going to tell you what it is now. I'm writing the script currently, but let's just say it's presidential.
Ooh, all right. You do love a president.
I do. I didn't think there was going to be a president in this story.
Oh, okay.
But what do you know? There is.
I can't
unexpectedly. Actually, there might be two presidents now I think about it. But anyway, let's not get ourselves ahead of things.
There's one in the cock chair.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter's in the cock chair.
Oh.
In the corner.
All right.
And Taft's riding you. No, anyway,
oh
we'll see you next time on Dystopian Simulation Radio.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.